Hi guys. So this week was week 1 in module 4, which is called Putting Big Ideas to Use. So it's about learning how to think in a way that is going to take your big ideas and make something out of them. So it all started with this super cool article called Give It 5 Minutes. And I love this article because I feel like I feel like I can be really quick to just brush stuff off sometimes, and I'm like, oh, I don't really know about that, and I just like brush it off, and I never come back to it. And the whole point of Give It 5 Minutes is that, like, yes, you might not agree with it, but is there something from it that you can learn? So that was something that I really liked because it talks about there's 2 things that take absolutely no skill to do. One of those is to spend other people's money, and the other is to dismiss an idea. So being someone that wants to strive for excellence, it was really interesting to be like, wow, I'm not even trying to understand things that I'm not interested in. I'm just blowing it off. So starting the week off like that was really cool because it kind of put me in this mindset of like, wow, what do I have to think about? So then we moved on to the work required to have an opinion, which, as someone who's super opinionated, was kind of like, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to feel about this. But I got into it, I read it, and one of the things that I said that really stuck out to me that I'm like continually thinking about was a quote from the article that said, you're not entitled to take a view until you can argue better against the view than the smartest guy who holds the opposite view. So basically, it's like I shouldn't have an opinion on something until I can argue with the person who holds the opposing view and win. And only then should I really have an opinion on something. So overall, the content was super like challenging, but it was super good. Like, it wasn't something that it stretched me, and it stretched kind of like my train thought. That didn't come out right. It stretched that, but it wasn't impossible to kind of come to a new place, arrive at a new destination. So the last point of the work required to have an opinion was that you have to think emotionally you have to think not emotionally, but rationally. And I think this can be hard because so many times we want to be like, this I feel, so it has to be right, and that doesn't make it right, and no one can tell you how you feel or what you feel. You're the only person that can really nail that down. And if everyone's just going based off what they feel, I mean, we all feel different things, so we're never going to kind of find like a middle ground. The next piece of content that I loved was called You Have No Idea How Wrong You Are. For someone that does not like being wrong, this little video, maybe, there we go. This little video was super awesome. I guess it wasn't really little, it was 27 minutes. But so we talked about how people have been wrong before. People are going to be wrong again. And there's no way to know that right now we are right, because everyone you're around right now is going to think that you're right. So one of the examples he used was like going back, the very first person who made an observation about the solar system thought that the Earth was the center of the solar system. And everybody agreed with him because that's all they knew. And then come forward however many years, another philosopher makes another proposal about the solar system, saying that the sun is the center of the solar system, and everybody was like, oh yeah, well they were wrong and we are right. So when we think about it, like what makes us right? How do we know for sure that we're right? Are we even right? And how can we be less wrong if it's not something maybe achievable to try and be right all the time? Like, how can we be less wrong? Was a super interesting question that he asked. So overall, he talked about this idea of they got it wrong and we got it right, and it's called the pessimistic induction. And it talks about what makes our ideas, the ideas that are at the end of the day in 500 years going to hold true, like what makes them right. And at the very end of the video, he flips it and he talks about the optimistic induction and about how, yes, we're wrong. Maybe we're not supposed to look at it as something that's bad, but maybe we're supposed to look at it as something like we're never going to know how much we can do. I mean, if we knew ourselves 100% and I knew what I was going to eat for lunch and I knew the exact words I was going to say to someone the next time I saw them, like that would put me in a box. Like I would never have any room to grow because I would know exactly who I was and what I was doing and where I was going. So he talks about the optimistic induction, and that talks about endless mystery, always room to learn and explore. So for me, I would naturally gravitate towards an optimistic induction viewpoint because I want to be able to, okay, don't understand how that works, but does that mean I can just like brush it off? Like, no, I have some other, like I can have responsibility there to learn something about it just because I don't understand the way that it works. So next we read an article called Why Philosophy Matters, or Why Philosophy Makes Entrepreneurs. And it talks about how philosophers kind of seek to structure a world that doesn't really have a lot of structure. Philosophers are deeply analytical, they strive to find deeper truths, they like to argue, and they aren't afraid of risk. So this article loads, maybe not. What I really loved about this article was that it wasn't something that was like, you have to be a philosopher to be an entrepreneur, but the best entrepreneurs also know how to think philosophically. And I think that I have, for a really long time, been like, oh, well, philosophy is for like other people, weird people. I don't know. It's not for me. I don't really need to do that. I don't need to learn to think that way. But I mean, to get where you want to go, to be a trailblazer, to be someone that's willing to step out, you have to be able to find structure in the world, to see things differently and analytically. You have to strive to find deeper truths to hold on to encounter, to entertain. You have to be able to, I don't know that I like the word argue here, but maybe be able to engage with other people with different viewpoints, be able to, oh, why do you believe that? Like, what about it makes it intriguing to you? Why are you interested in that? And be able to come back with answers to those same questions. And philosophers aren't afraid of risk, which is something that I feel like hasn't really had a tight hold on my life, as I've always been someone ready to take the next step. But I think when you can logically see the world, it makes taking risks a little less scary. So after that, we didn't talk. I listened to this soundbite here from a podcast called Philosophy Bites, and it was on top philosophers answering the question, what is philosophy? And I absolutely loved this because it shows you exactly how personal philosophy can be. Philosophy isn't like a my way or the highway kind of thing. And throughout this entire 26-minute clip, there's tons of different answers. I mean, no two people give the same answer. Everyone has an answer that's individual to them, and some of them have different like themes about like understanding the world or a way of thinking. However, they want to kind of categorize philosophy. They have different themes in common, but none of them had like the exact same definition. And I think that's super cool because when you look at something like science, everybody learns that science is like the way that you explore the universe. It's the rules and regulations, it's the theories, it's the laws. It's all the same. It's not like science isn't interpretable, and philosophy is something that everyone can kind of take their own nugget away from. So what I really loved, a couple definitions of philosophy that I'm going to share with you. So philosophy is thinking fundamentally and clearly. Philosophy is getting people to think. Philosophy is the pursuit of wisdom. Philosophy is two common sense notions that push away from each other. And philosophy is a mode of inquiry. So when you think about philosophy and how it has like a hold on our life, like there's so many things that can be thought of hypothetically that we might never even consider, but maybe thinking about them hypothetically is going to lead you to something else, or it's going to lead you to the idea that you've been waiting for. And to me, it was just really cool to hear so many different people define the same thing differently. So the last thing we focused on this week was critical thinking. And one of the things that I love that this article says, I hope it loads because I really want to show you this article, was that, oh yes, it's going to load. Where is it? When thinkers refuse to engage such hypotheticals, I tend to see them as evasive or anti-intellectual. So when people aren't willing to consider something that might never happen, they've kind of lost their ability to dream. In my own words, I would say that they have put their brain in a box. Like they don't want to talk about things that will never happen because they can't process it in a way. That being said, this article is super cool because when you learn to think critically, it gives you intellectual clarity in a complex world, which is something that I had never thought of or considered, or even it wasn't even a term that was on my radar. And I think that's something that we all strive for, is intellectual clarity in a complex world. So when you think about how this all kind of comes together and what it does and why we interpret the world the way that it is, it's something that was super interesting. So, all that said, that was week 1 of Module 4, Big Ideas That Matter. Let me make sure I answered all these questions. I think I gave a pretty good recap. Let's see. I don't know where that went. Where did I put them? Where did I put them? There we go. So, what ideas were new to me? What ideas were new to me this week? I would say that you're not as wrong, you're more wrong than you think you are. So the pessimistic induction, the optimistic induction, those were new. They were super, super interesting to think about. I don't know that I totally agree with the pessimistic induction. As I said before, I'd lean more towards an optimistic induction just because of who I am and my desires. I don't know if desires is the right word. I would lean more towards an optimistic induction point of view because I believe that there's always more to learn. I'm never going to know everything, and that's okay. So what can I know? And that is kind of where I feel like an optimistic induction point sits, is I can't know everything, but what can I know? And I'm going to learn what I can know. So I definitely think I'm going to start implementing some of these ideas, like give it 5 minutes. Not necessarily like 5 minutes on the clock, but just like take some time and think about it. Does this make sense? If it doesn't make sense, why isn't it making sense? Aside from that, like, and just being aware of knowing, like, okay, I'm gonna say this, and it might be right, and it might be wrong. Um, and knowing that, like, I'm never gonna be 100% right, and I'm probably always gonna be very close to wrong. So, what can I like? Where is the balance between like being less wrong and being more wrong, and what does being less wrong look like? So overall, I mean, I've been kind of going into a little bit of philosophy with Sophie's World. So there were some, like the theories that he talks about in You're Not As Wrong, or You're Not As Right As You Think You Are, the video clip um, about like the earth and like early philosophers were something that I've learned in Sophie's World. So that was really cool to be like, oh, I know what he's talking about. Like, yes, yes, yes. Because I could kind of like go along with him there. So there's a lot more. I haven't finished Sophie's World yet, so I know that I will learn more. And because I have an optimistic viewpoint on the world, I will continue to learn more every day. But for now, that's all I got. So, week 1, recap on module 4, putting big ideas to use. See you soon.